If you think modern generations know struggle, imagine being a child when the entire world collapsed around you, and no one asked how you felt about it. No therapy, no emotional support, no safety nets, just one rule: stay strong, stay useful, stay quiet. They were born between 1928 and 1945, and their childhood wasn't shaped by comfort or self-discovery. It was shaped by survival. They are known as the silent generation, and to understand them, you have to step into a world where stability could disappear overnight. Picture this: you are a child in 1930. The adults around you are whispering constantly. Banks are failing. Jobs are vanishing. Families who once felt secure are suddenly losing homes, selling possessions, or standing in long food lines just to survive another week. You don't fully understand what's happening, but you feel the fear. You see it in your parents' faces. You hear it in their arguments late at night when they think you're asleep, and when fear becomes the atmosphere of childhood. Children don't grow up dreaming. They grow up preparing. They learn to save everything. They learn not to waste food. They learn not to ask for too much. They learn that safety is fragile and comfort is temporary. For them, happiness wasn't the priority, stability was. And just as the world slowly begins to recover, it shatters again. World War II begins. For children of the silent generation, war wasn't a distant history lesson. It was personal. Fathers left for battle. Older brothers disappeared into military service. Families lived with constant uncertainty, wondering if loved ones would ever come home again. News reports talked about bombings, casualties, and destruction across continents. Entire communities lived under the shadow of global conflict. Childhood became filled with absence, fear, and responsibility far too early. When children grow up surrounded by war, they learn a dangerous psychological lesson. Feelings slow you down. Duty keeps people alive. Sacrifice becomes normal. And those lessons don't disappear when the war ends. They become identity. Parenting during this era reflected the harsh reality of the world. Discipline was strict. Authority was rarely questioned. Emotional conversations were almost non-existent. Not because parents didn't care, but because survival didn't leave space for emotional expression. If you cried, you were told to toughen up. If you were afraid, you were told to be brave. If life felt unfair, you were told life doesn't promise fairness. Over time, children learned to bury fear instead of processing it. They learned to carry emotional weight silently, because that's what strength looked like. Responsibility also arrived early. Many silent generation children began working at young ages, not for extra spending money, but to help their families survive. Childhood blended directly into adulthood without warning. Work became more than a paycheck. Work became protection. Work became identity. This is why loyalty defined them. Many stayed with the same job for decades, not because they lacked ambition, but because instability felt terrifying. Losing income didn't just threaten their present. It triggered memories of complete collapse. At the same time, society pushed a powerful message: conform. After surviving economic disaster and global war, communities craved order and stability. Following rules meant safety. Standing out felt risky. Individual expression was often sacrificed for collective security. To modern generations, conformity can feel restrictive. But to them, conformity felt protective. Structure meant survival. Then the war finally ended, and the world faced one of the biggest rebuilding periods in modern history. Cities were damaged. Economies were fragile. Families were trying to piece themselves back together. And the silent generation stepped directly into that responsibility. They became the workers rebuilding infrastructure, the parents creating stable households, the citizens rebuilding trust in society itself. They built systems designed to prevent the world from collapsing again. But there was a psychological cost, one that history rarely talks about. When an entire generation spends decades prioritizing duty over emotion, those emotions don't disappear. They go underground. Many silent generation adults struggled to talk about trauma they experienced as children. They showed love through sacrifice, responsibility, and providing. Not through vulnerability or emotional openness. They protected families. They supported communities. They carried burdens quietly, and because they endured some of the most unstable decades in modern history, they developed an extraordinary resilience that still defines them today. They could tolerate stress longer than most people. They could endure hardship without complaining. They could remain loyal even when life became difficult. They were trained by history to endure, not express. And that brings us back to the name that followed them for decades: the silent generation. They were never silent because they lacked opinions. They were silent because they were raised to believe speaking about struggle wouldn't change survival. Silence became armor. Silence became discipline. Silence became protection. And their influence didn't end with their own lives. These are the parents who raised the baby boomer generation, passing down values like hard work, sacrifice, loyalty, and emotional restraint. Many cultural expectations we still live under today were shaped by lessons they learned during crisis, in a world that now rewards constant expression, instant reaction, and public vulnerability. The silent generation represents something very different. A reminder that strength once meant endurance, that responsibility once outweighed personal comfort, and that entire generations can carry invisible emotional histories without ever speaking about them. If this perspective made you see everyday people a little differently, subscribe to Psychology of Everyday People for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping how we think, live, and connect.